Hey guys, so I'm going to analyze the Matrix 4 trailer. It's called Matrix Resurrections, which came out a few days ago. The release date was September 9th, I believe. And I'm going to look at the symbology and the numerology in the trailer. So this graphic right here that you can see, this is some of the numerology that I found, and I'm going to analyze that as we go through the trailer. I'm going to go through it chronologically. For example, these numbers here, this one 145, and then this building number 155, and the inside mirrored to 551, and the release date of the Matrix movie, 12.22.21, so the end of this year, and it's a page number. And I think you will be shocked at what I found. It's how I look like when I found these things, mind blown. So this was the post that started this dig. It was by Majestic 12, and they forwarded this post that somebody else made. They were called Red Pill Pharmacist on Telegram, and they asked, "Are the white hats of Hollywood ready to have a firm hand in the awakening? Watch this trailer and decide for yourself. Tell me what you see. White rabbits, blue pills, red pills, Alice in Wonderland, and more. Coming 12/22nd day. Merry Christmas, Anons and Patriots." And so I dug into this trailer just mainly because Majestic 12 reposted it to see what I could find. I might not actually have paid as much attention to it otherwise, but actually I found so much stuff. I suggest watching the trailer first if you haven't seen it. It's about 3 minutes long. This is the trailer on the Warner Brothers Pictures YouTube, and you can watch it first when I watch my video, and then you can maybe watch it again afterwards. I'm going to go through stills that I took from the trailer because it's just way too fast playing the video itself. And I think there are about 162 that I counted that I've done, and that's almost all of them, but there's just a few more that just basically repeats about 200 or so, maybe a bit less than that, in the whole trailer. So, starts with this scene from a city here, and we go straight into the psychiatrist's room, which this is his pet cat because he's got a picture of it later in a framed photograph. You'll see that shortly. And straight away, we've got these two butterflies. Now that's a reference to Project Monarch. And Project Monarch, I don't think is the real name of the project, but people refer to it as that name, Project Monarch, which is basically a program descended from MKUltra about mind control and splitting a person's mind at a very young age into multiple personalities that can be controlled. And another reference here, got a pine cone, and that is a book end of his books, because there's another one on the other end of those books. You can see later in the trailer. And so the pine cone is a symbol of the pineal gland, and that's a symbol that's used by the elites. Historically, you can see this pine cone, on furniture and people's scepters, and it's something that's been covered up by the elite for the last few thousand years because they've been abusing their power, basically practicing black magic and keeping people in the dark about the pineal gland. Now, pineal gland is the third eye. It's the same thing, basically. And there's a statue there of the guy's brain showing. And there, I think that is Neo. He's quite nervous, talking to his psychiatrist, who you can see here, played by Neil Harris. And already, just a few seconds into the trailer, guys, got the pyramid there with the capstone, all-seeing eye. Already we've got the pyramid. We didn't have to wait long. Illuminati pyramid as the shape of this lamp shade. And so the psychiatrist's glasses are blue, which connect to the blue butterfly there. That's a blue pill reference. Now he takes notes and uses the word triggered. Now trigger is connected to Project Monarch as well. There's supposed to be these keywords that trigger people's alternate personalities. And then Neo goes into this flashback where firstly he's walking through the street here where he's clenching his fist and the shot's out of focus, and he can see the Matrix as he's walking through the street there. And then I think that's a zoom in of a 0 possibly, in the Matrix code in the middle of that. And then now this guy here, his eyes are normal at first, and then suddenly they go black with what looks like the Matrix source code. That is those kind of, numbers, the green numbers dropping down like code or rain. And that's in his eye. So now that's already a reference to Complan 88 with the zombies who have been injected by nanotechnology. And that's what it means by these eyes having source code. It is nanotechnology that has been injected into people and it's controlling them, right? So it's taken over this man. And then I think the same man shoots a gun at Neo. You can see him there for the first time. Aged Neo with his goatee, Keanu Reeves. In this particular instance, the bullet's going past him, I think. And then in his flashback, some of them appear to be references to the first 3 movies. But as far as I could tell, some of these shots were new ones from this current movie. They weren't all actually shots from the older movies, even though I'm not an expert with the old movies. I think some of them might be from the old movies as well. So we've got Neo there, and these kind of robots are working on him. I think it's Neo at least. And you can see his eyes are kind of like burnt or missing there. It's pretty bad. And again, got more references to these robots, basically kind of like nanotechnology. And then a younger version of Morpheus, looks like, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and encountering some police. And there it looks like, from one of the old movies, maybe the first one, I think it's Neo shaking Trinity's hand, and then there's a light there. Now that gets referenced again later in the trailer. And in this one here, it looks like Trinity, but it's not actually clear because I don't know if that shot was from one of the original movies, because there was a similar scene to that one, but it was slightly different. And then we've got these machines here. I think these are the ones that carry the capsules like that Neo was lying in here. This one here. And onto the second graphic there, we've got Neo waking up from the Matrix, basically plugged in. Like that's how we are. Essentially plugged in. It's real, the Matrix. And someone snapping him out of apparent hypnosis, but normally that would be the psychiatrist. In the trailer, it was the psychiatrist who he was talking to, but you can see in this shot there's somebody else in the background, so it's a different scene. That's a lady or someone else. And this person's got a square ring on his finger, so this is not the same scene. And then that's the scene that he cut back to. Then you can see his blue glasses connected to the blue butterfly, blue pill reference, and he's also got a blue cardigan on. And as I was saying there, the psychiatrist got this framed picture of the cat. And that cat was supposed to be like a deja vu cat that was in the old movies. And it happens when the Matrix glitches out, I think, and some kind of a Roman statue there, Roman soldier or leader. And there you can clearly see as I was saying, the second pine cone holding the books together. Books mean knowledge, and so we're talking about this occult knowledge that's hidden by the elite, basically, about the pineal gland, the third eye. And one of the quotes that when they're talking here, the psychiatrist says, we don't use the word crazy here. Then we've got Neo looking concerned, and in the background this is kind of maze with the blue background and kind of yellow on top of a blue there. And then got some credits, and then got this bridge here. Now got Neo sitting in a bath, and in the framing of this picture, Neo's head's cut off by the bathtub as well as the water. So it kind of symbolizes the suspension of the mental consciousness. Basically, he's thinking, and the way that this duck is on his head kind of means that he's going crazy, but at the same time, he's completely calm when he's just reflecting there. So there's a contrast, and he sort of sweats or water drips down his face. That close-up shot, and then there we've got this scene where Neo is shaking Trinity's hand, and they don't quite recognize each other, but they have a feeling, as suggested by Trinity, that they've met before. She asks him that. And so we don't know the whole story about this movie because some of the characters have aged, like Neo and Trinity, whereas Morpheus hasn't, and some other characters haven't, because it appears to be some kind of time travel going on with Looking Glass or something similar to that. And also that was the reference to earlier in the trailer when I think it was Neo and Trinity shaking hands and she's wearing some kind of a bracelet there. So they didn't really recognize each other. And now he ends up taking these blue pills from a little container here that appears to have been prescribed by his psychiatrist because we've got the same colors and, presumably that's what the psychiatrist gave him. And it said on the container 1 capsule daily. So it's a prescribed medication for him, Thomas Anderson. It's got his name on it. And now normally in the movies, there's just one blue pill that you take, and that's, to go back to sleep or stay asleep. And in this case, there's a juxtaposition between multiple blue pills, being his prescribed medication that he's taking every day, and that kind of keeping him asleep. So it's multiple instead of just one. And then the red pill is the one that wakes you up. Now, we've got another reference here to the Project Monarch, because in Project Monarch, your personality gets split up into many different personalities that are different to each other, and each personality is essentially compartmentalized and unaware of the next one. And those different personalities can be trained as different types of people, like an assassin, for example, or a sex slave. And you can see here he's got 4 reflections in the mirror. Now, the mirror is another recurring theme in the trailer. One is the Looking Glass, and then, as I said, the other one is Project Monarch, where the person, where he's on the right here, sees himself in the mirror. There's a reflection of the multiple personalities, in this case, showing himself 4 times or seeing himself 4 times instead of just one single time. And he looks in the mirror, and the drug that he takes, his medication, presumably affects him, and his pupil contracts as he sees the light. And usually, I think some drugs, some psychedelic ones at least, dilate your pupil. And there he looks close into the mirror. And he walks out of a building, and the sun is in the sky, and there's this flock of birds. And I can't obviously tell what kind of birds that they are, but it's similar to a starling murmuration, where the birds form these shapes that some of them exist in nature, but the birds are showing a connection to each other of awareness that even humans don't have. So I would say that they are probably starlings, and it's a starling murmuration, but I can't actually tell what kind of birds that they are. And so you can see them again there. Starlings, probably. And then in this scene here, Neo is standing, I think he's in a lift, and all these people around him are on their phones, smartphones and tablets. Most of them are listening to music, so they've got headphones or earphones on. Now, that's kind of symbolical of people being plugged into the Matrix, but my understanding of this situation is that most of them are connected to the internet. So when people say, like, you're addicted to your smartphone and stuff, well, it's not exactly true. It's because the smartphone has connection to the internet, so people are actually addicted to the internet because of their loneliness, if that makes sense. And Majestic 12 have said the internet is majestic, and it depends how you use it. So in this case, they're probably consuming media, listening to music, and maybe watching videos or using social media. And they are plugged in to the Matrix. Neo's observing them. He's not using his phone himself or listening to music. And then he looks up into the ceiling, and there's a mirror on it. And the shot's from very low down on the ground, but he's looking up, and you can actually see the screens of many of these people's phones, and this person's got a tablet here. And so again, we've got another mirror, and then now we've got Neo looking in the mirror again and holding these blue pills, many of them, and he drops them into the sink, and they sort of just spill in there like something's going wrong, because this is not really something that you'd be doing, dropping the pills into the sink like that. And there's so many of them. Again, there's another reflection, round one of the bottom of the sink. And then he walks into this restaurant here, and something like a Chinese restaurant, although the lady is African American or similar. And in the background, you can see this word exit very clearly behind his head. So it's symbolical exit of the Matrix, leaving the Matrix. And this lady here is holding a book right now. This is the first big drop, which we'll talk about. And so she shuts this book. Now, this is from Neo's point of view, so it's upside down, it's mirrored, right? And the book is here, upside down, as I said, because this is showing Neo's point of view. This is the woman's hand behind the counter. And I'll go to my other graphic to look at this more closely. So I flipped the images here, and the book is Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Now, it looks like a double edition, so I'm pretty sure those are both two separate books, but it's 2 in 1. Now, the Looking Glass is referenced in Patriot 17's post twice, and Majestic 12, I've talked about it a whole ton of times, right? Now, it's basically a way of looking at the future, but in this movie, not only do they merely look at the future, but they go into the future or the past. So they basically time travel, and Alice is Hillary Clinton in the drops. And in this movie, basically, I think Neo would be taking the position of Alice, going down the rabbit hole, going into Wonderland with what he does. And, these are all referenced like in the original Matrix movies. And now this is where the big drop is. So that's the book, right? Now, what does it mean? Well, when you look at the page number, right, it is page 145, okay? And I'll analyze that now. So first of all, what is the drop? 145, page 17 post. This is it. And the next post, number 146, is exactly the same as the previous post, 145. So they're exactly the same. The contents of the post are the mirror of each other. And when you mirror them, so I mirrored the 146 next to the 145 here, it is a boom, right? So it's boom time Baker. And, it's reinforced by when the URL hyperlink, is a different color and it's in the middle of the boom there. So it's kind of emphasized. And you can see the base of the boom and the top. And it says, warning, this is not a game. And the third line's about the clowns, CIA, and then fourth line's about NSA. So the war between NSA and CIA. Do you believe in coincidences? How many coincidences do you need before you believe? This is the biggest insider drop in the history of the world. Pray. Now that has more meaning, which we'll come to, but first of all, the numerology of 145 and 146, they are both clear references to the presidents, like the previous president and the current president. So 45 was Trump, right? And 46 is Biden. Now, because this number on the page was 145, you see, it's a bit hard to see. Because the number is 145, the people behind this video, they're showing that they're the white hat, so they're on Trump's side. So Trump was the last legitimate president, and now we've got President 46 Biden, who's a belligerent president, right? Part of a belligerent administration that is an occupying power, right? Now, as for the other meanings of 145 and 146, well, what do they mean? Well, I know because I did the Law of War, the Storm Dig, right? Now, those two numbers specifically will refer to footnotes in the Law of War manual, and they would be in either chapter 11 or 18 or both. Now, check this out. So this is why it's such a big drop. In this page number, which is 780, this is the sentence that the footnote 145 refers to, which is there. You can see it. I'll read it out. This is in chapter 11, military occupation. So it says 11.8.3, local governments under duress or surrogate governments. The restrictions placed upon the authority of a belligerent state cannot be avoided by a system of using a puppet government, central or local, to carry out acts that would be unlawful if performed directly by the occupying power. Acts induced or compelled by the occupying power are nonetheless its acts. Now, this is a direct reference to the Biden administration, what's currently going on in America, which is why this is such a big drop, and I haven't seen anybody pick up on it. They were like, oh yeah, Alice in Wonderland, Blue Pill, Red Pill, more kind of cliche stuff, but it's so much deeper than that. And then the footnote, I think, basically says the same thing, referring to some other document. And then the next one, so 146, we'll read that one out as well. 11.8.4, responsibility of the occupying power for treatment accorded to protected persons by its agents. An occupying power, like belligerent states, is responsible for the treatment accorded to protected persons by its agents, irrespective of any individual responsibility that may be incurred. And then the footnote referred to 10.3.5, state responsibility for its agents' treatment of protected persons, 18.9.1, state responsibility for violations of the law of war by its armed forces. And then in chapter 18, the number 145 and 146 references would be to this sentence here, or two sentences. It reads 18.13.2, Department of Defense policy on investigating law of war violations. DoD policy has required that all reportable incidences must be thoroughly investigated. It's 145. All the military departments and services have regulations for the conduct of both formal and informal administrative investigations. That's 146. Now, those violations of the law of war that is being done by the Biden administration, because they're an occupying power, pretending to be a sovereign power when they're not one, so they're violating the laws of war by doing what a sovereign power can do, but that's not allowed. So the footnotes go into more detail. I'll try to read this out even though it's long. 145, DoD Directive 231101E, DoD Law of War Program 4.4, May 9th, 2006, certified current as of February 22nd, 2011. I think that's been updated, that document. All reportable incidences committed by or against U.S. personnel, enemy persons, or any other individual are reported promptly, investigated thoroughly, and, where appropriate, remedied by corrective action. And that reference is basically repeated 3 more times, so 4 times altogether. So I won't say them again. And then 146, CEG Department of the Navy Judge Advocate General Instruction 58007D, Manual of the Judge Advocate General, JAGMAN, Chapter 2, March 15th, 2004, Department of the Army Regulation 15.6, Procedures for Investigating Officers and Boards of Officers, November 2nd, 2006. So those were some pretty big drops there, and there's more, so we'll continue. Now, this was the lady who opened the book. You can see her face, and it seems like she is the young Oracle, although I can't say for sure whether she is. But she's played by the actress Priyanka Chopra. And then we've got Neo looking into this mirror on the right there. And in the background is the Matrix movie playing in a theater, I think, on a screen. And that is Neo, the young Neo himself. And he looks into the mirror and it looks like it's his older self. So he's seeing himself in the future, possibly. Though it's not completely clear. And then he flashes back to normal. But he's taken aback, and then somewhere, looks like on a stage, this younger Morpheus appears offering him the red pill, that is Neo, and Neo looks at him, and he has the choice there. You can see this is the classic Matrix reference of choosing between the red pill, which wakes you up, and the blue pill, which puts you to sleep, or keeps you asleep, and Neo chooses the red pill, so, from taking his blue pill prescription drugs, now he's taking the red pill, even though in the original movies he's already taken them, so it's kind of strange. Like, we don't know 100% what's going on with the storyline and how they were connected to the original movies. And then there's a shot of a city here, and then this new character appears with the tattoo of a white rabbit, and that is in blue ink, which is more rare than green ink, which tattoos are normally done in. And you can see her here. This character, whose name we don't know, but she is played by the actress Jessica Hennick, and she's a cool character in the trailer. She almost steals the show from Neo with some of the moves that she made, and she's well cast. And then she asks Neo if he wants to find the truth, she's got to follow her. That is, follow the white rabbit. And the song that's played in the trailer, it's called White Rabbit itself. And again, he's faced with that choice of following her or not. So she puts on these sunglasses and opens this door, which is full of light. Now, this is the shot here. Neo walks forward into the door, and this is the thumbnail that I chose for the video because it's somewhat ambiguous. But in the context of this dig, basically this reference to the white light is a reference to First Contact, that is a light of First Contact going from dark to light. And the reason I mentioned First Contact is partially to do with the end date of when the movie gets released and some of the Majestic 12 references basically in the video. And we will come to it. So they go through this door, and then it cuts to a scene of this lady walking through a mirror, and then Neo follows her. So they're in some kind of like hotel or restaurant, and Neo's coming through the mirror. You can see him there, and there's another lady in the background, and yep, just normally walking through a mirror, pretty casual. And then it cuts to a scene of Trinity with Neo holding her hand and her motorbike there on the side, you know, I think from the original movies. And there, strangely, there's some source code or similar green light on Trinity's face, and Neo thinks it's probably strange or that's not normal. And then we've got a scene of the young Morpheus, who in the first movie trained Neo, but when they fight here, basically Neo's already trained, and so he beats Morpheus pretty bad, which, you know, I assume that it's Morpheus because basically this was the same scene in the original movie. They fight, and Neo does this force blast on Morpheus and just blows him out of the building, basically destroys the building, I think. And you can see it there on the water. And this Christmas, now that's connected to the date of the release of the movie, which is the 22nd of December. And this shot of these red, you know, capsules, basically these are people being harvested energetically. They're trapped in the Matrix, and these little drones flying around. Dystopian universe. Now, you can see them there, and some people are saying that these are normally full, more populated, but some of the people left the Matrix, and that's why these dark sections are throughout these structures, because some people chose to leave the Matrix and some people chose to stay there. And there I've got some ruins of a city, and Neo with Trinity on top of a skyscraper with the sun in the background. And we've got some police SWAT team shooting bullets, and Jessica Hennick jumping off a building. And yeah, she does a pretty cool landing there. And then we've got a police getting taken over by an agent. So no Agent Smith in this movie, but we've got some different agents. One with a pretty mean face there, and they're coming after Neo. And then it cuts to a scene of somebody pointing a gun at Neo's head, and we don't know who is holding the gun, but it's raining in that scene. And you know, you can't see the person's face, but it's very menacing. Neo's in a helpless position. This was me when I did the Law of War: The Storm decode, guys. But the rest is history, and nothing stops this. Nothing. And more shooting by the police. And so some people shoot this missile through this opening in the stage. This was I think the mirror that Neo was looking into earlier in the trailer, and some, you know, computers and stuff. And you can see it's a stage, and then it looks like there's a parting there. The projector screen, or the curtain that the projector is going on to, has a opening inside it, and then the missile just flies through, and then it cuts to this train scene. And I don't know if that missile went, you know, like through time, or it's just a different scene that they were showing next. We've got this blue door, and the missile hits the train, and so we've got Morpheus walking through the train there, and you can see the explosion. I think people were saying this is in Japan, and there's some cherry blossom trees in the background. And we've got Jessica Hennick and the young Morpheus with Neo, and then a scene of Neo fighting some character who we don't know who that is, but Neo dispenses of her pretty easily. And then we've got Morpheus with these two guns here, and the words Deus Machina in the background. You can see it more clearly. And I don't think there was space between the words for an X. In this case, it would just mean God Machine, I guess. I don't know Latin, so I think it just means God and machine, God Machine. And there was some reference to the movie about Deus Ex Machina in the earlier movies. And then we've got Trinity here. She's connected through the back of her neck, but this is slightly kind of more benign because there's actual light here. And although, like Neo was connected earlier in the movie, he was in a more negative situation. This seems different, but can't exactly tell what's going on that easily either. Now you've got the SWAT team fighting against Trinity, and then when she is fighting with them, she gets angry, and then you can see again another Project Monarch reference to the split personalities. So all these other personalities split from her in this moment of rage. You can see at least, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least, or 10 other alters that split from her single character. And then we've got Morpheus touching a mirror, and his finger goes through it like liquid, and he's taken aback. So that's some kind of looking glass. And Jessica Hennick again jumping over a police car. That's some major parkour there. And then a motorbike scene and some agents knocking down a door. It's shot sideways. And you've got Jessica running up the side of a hallway, shooting back at these agents who are pursuing her. And looks like the young Morpheus is with her. And then they jump out of a building. At least I think it's them. Someone else falls out of a building. And then, yeah, it does look like Morpheus. And then they land into the ground. Like they go through the ground like in the original movie where that scene happened as well. And this fight scene here. And Neo fighting off many SWAT team members, wielding some kind of light from his hand there. And he basically just blows them all away with some kind of superpower. And this one here, I apologize, I missed something. So in this image, there's the building number 155, which is significant. Not as significant as the mirror of that, but we'll cover both. So there's also this license plate number, which I couldn't find too much on, although I did look into it. So more significant than the 155 is this here, the 551, which is the mirror of 155. And we'll look at that now. So we've got Neo holding back bullets with his powers. So these are the two images more closely. 155, what was that? Post 155, got some code there. Conf dt t v891 0600 yes, green 1 0600. Those could be possible times, but I'm not sure. 0600. And bunker apple yellow sky +1 yes, Godspeed. Now that was less significant than the next number, which was 551. So the inside of the building, it looks like the number is the other way around, right? Because that number is placed on the outside of the building on top of a window, right? Now, what is 551 in the drops? So in drop 551, we have the word RR repeated 4 times, right? Now, in my Law of War dig, you know that RR equals Rod Rosenstein, but the double meaning is that RR in Gematria, R is 18, so RR is 1818 reprisals, and that is in the Law of War manual, so it's a double meaning. Now, that RR was repeated 4 times in that post, once in the first line, and then 3 times later in the post. That is in lines 4 to 6, right? So skipping the second and third lines. And the second line asks, why was Rod Rosenstein chosen to be Assistant Attorney General? Now, I'm pretty sure that he was Deputy Attorney General, not Assistant Attorney General. He was in the assistant position in other times earlier in his career, but this looks like a potential misspelling because, as you can see here, under Trump, who must be this reference, the position of deputy is not the same as assistant. And when it comes to attorney generals, I'm pretty sure. And, it looks like it was this reference to 1919, because in Gematria, the letter S is the number 19, so SS means 1919. Now, you can see it there, Assistant Attorney General, whereas his position was Deputy Attorney General. Now, what does 1919 mean? Well, it means 1919 Biological Weapons Convention, in the Law of War manual, and that is on page 1176. Now, you can see what it means there. The last sentence in the chapter says, in implementation of the Biological Weapons Convention, Congress enacted legislation prohibiting development, production, transfer, acquisition, or possession of a biological agent, toxin, or delivery system for use as a weapon. And the Biological Weapons Convention was open for signature on April 10th, 1972. And China's part of that, America's part of that. Many countries are part of that. And so in that drop, I'll read out the rest quickly. So line 3 said reconcile, and then line 7 to 10 said confused. News unlocks past. These cannot survive at the beginning of the end. And so that post basically combined the meaning of reprisals 4 times, so it doubled up with the meaning of The Matrix 4 because it's the 4th movie. So it got 4 RRs, and this is The Matrix 4 trailer. And that being reprisals, so, from doing the Law of War dig, 18.18 reprisals is what triggers 11.3 end of occupation. And there you can see reprisals in the Law of War manual, page 1110. And then continuing on, we've got Trinity with Neo, and Neo holding the bullets back. And this one here is another reference to Con Plan 8888, because someone on a motorbike, I'm not sure who that is, I think possibly Neo, but there are these zombies on the street, right? Now, zombies is a reference to Con Plan 8888, where people get injected by this nanotechnology, and the US military basically has a plan for that scenario, right? And so you can see from these people's eyes, they have this matrix source code in them. So that's because of the nanotechnology that's been injected into them. And they're zombies, fighting who looks like Neo. And, from their stance, it's sort of hunched over. And they have green glowing eyes there. You can see, it's a bit hard to see, but they have green eyes. And they're sort of just hobbling along the street. And there's police there as well. And there's bodies flying, zombies lurching, and then a helicopter shooting a missile there, a similar scene. And so it's Neo and Trinity on the motorbike, and Trinity's driving, and then it cuts to a scene later on where these helicopters are shooting some missiles at Trinity and Neo top of a skyscraper, and Neo uses his powers to deflect one of the missiles that's coming at them away to the other helicopter nearby, and that one explodes. You can see there, that is the one that's exploding, and the other helicopter, I think the one that shot the missile, flying away. And then holding hands, they jump off the building, and they sort of just fly there, the sun in the background. And then it cuts to a scene at the end where Neo's looking at this man. We don't know who that is, but it looks like a businessman of some sort. He's quite young, played by Jonathan Groff, and he's saying back to the Matrix, which is obviously a reference to the original movies from many years ago, like almost 20 years ago now. And then you can see the title of the movie, The Matrix Resurrections, that's in plural. So resurrection is coming back to life from the dead, right? But it's in plural there, which is a little bit strange. But this was the other big drop, the last drop, because of the numerology of the date is 12.22.21, so I'll look at that now. So what do those numbers mean? Well, they are a palindrome, which is a number that is mirrored from the first half to the second half, so 1, 2, 2, and repeats itself in reverse order again, 2, 2, 1. And you can see it like that. And so it's a few things. So it's a 5, 5, because there's a 5 on each side. When you add them up, 1 + 2 + 2 = 5. So that means loud and clear. And the other meaning is that when you add those numbers up, so just those numbers there, 12 + 22 + 21 equals 55. And what is drop 55? It is, look to Twitter, exactly this: my fellow Americans, the storm is upon us. Now, we don't know who's going to say that or if it will happen, but it was some kind of calm where, President Trump got suspended by Twitter, probably under pressure. But that was in the last few days of his administration. And so Twitter was censoring him, even though he's the president of the United States, and he had, I think almost 100 million followers when that happened. And then another thing is when we add up the total number, so 21 is just short for 2021, so there's a missing 2 and 0, right? So add those all up together, 12 plus 22 plus 2021. The total number is 2055. So again, we've got another 55, as we said, 55 or drop 55, right? And when you reduce that further, it is 2055. It is a 12 in numerology. And so 12 is a signature of Majestic 12. That's their number, and that's the first number of this date, which is the month, right? December, and also it's mirrored there. Agenda 21, but the mirror of that is Majestic 12. And so there's a signature of Majestic 12 in that, and 12 obviously reduces to a 3. And it's better to put it in separate lines, guys, because apparently in mathematics, I remember this from school, like if you add the equals, so if this line was up here, technically it's incorrect. Like you can't just have like the equation going equals along in the same line. They should be in different lines like this, because apparently you're not supposed to do that. So that was something about that number. And it happened last year on Twitter. Majestic 12 talked about the palindrome at that time, which was 2/2/2020. So the 2nd of February 2020, which was a different palindrome. And one of the other meanings to that date, so I should say, the solstice is the previous day, late in the day, that is the 21st of December. And so solstice is basically when the sun goes into Capricorn, right, the 1st degree. And actually in this next day, it's still in the 1st degree, so technically it's still the solstice, loosely defined, that is, and that is a very important date each year. And Christmas is just a few days later, in this case, 3 days later. And now Sandia the ET talked about it. So Sandia the ET are the Zetas that crashed at Roswell, and Majestic 12 were formed to deal with that crash. So they're both connected to each other. The fates were intertwined. The Zetas and Majestic 12 that were formed by President Truman 1947, all those years ago, and they were actually both on Twitter at the same time, talking to each other. There were some comments that they made to each other. So in this case, Sandia the ET, that account, says, "Friend, you are confused. The treaty ended already, but official first contact is in the fall of 2021, between about September 22nd and December 21st. Grayson." So what they're talking about is the September equinox and the December solstice. So they're choosing a special date for official first contact, but that is not a two-way agreement. That's just on their side, because there is no official time set that is, by the US military with the extraterrestrials. In fact, this is just the Star Nations organizing among themselves a time for first contact to take place on their own part without knowing when it's actually going to happen. And they were just responding to this comment where this guy said, "Got a feeling this is all BS. Treaty ends. No first contact as of tomorrow." The treaty ending in August, the last week of August this year, just meant that the Star Nations that signed to it, the extraterrestrials, were not allowed to share photos and videos of themselves or technology, but now they can do that. So apparently they're going to try to share photographs, maybe videos online. And that's like a slow disclosure of extraterrestrial life. And yeah, so the palindromes, there's a few in December because 12 and 21 are the dates there, and then the day number, this is obviously like American formatting, so the days 1st to the 9th of December are all palindromes, so that's like 9 days in a row. And then also the 11th is a palindrome, and then the one that was the Matrix for Resurrection's release date, 12/22/21, is also a palindrome. And now we'll just cover some Majestic 12 posts. So from Twitter, this is an old post, 6th of June 2018. They said, "The Majestic 12 seeded the Matrix into the public consciousness to ensure that free will wasn't violated. We disclosed to you what we were doing. Your lack of education was a choice to not understand. This is legitimately how MJ12 viewed this at the time." And it's referring to somebody's comments. They remember the Matrix. If you saw the film, how powerful of an image was this? And that's the people getting harvested there. And then this post a few hours ago that Majestic 12 made, I was trying to figure some stuff out, like the injection, how much of it was making people into zombies and how much of it was lethal, right? Because I wasn't 100% sure I was getting information that it was both. But then, how do they relate to each other? Basically, like, how deadly is the injection, and, what is the extent that it makes you into a zombie? Because those are two different things, right? Now, this post that they made, they basically read my mind and answered my question, right? So Complan 8888, which I talked about in my previous two videos, and strangely enough, the last video that I made was called The Matrix, or the first few words of that title were The Matrix, and now I'm making a video about The Matrix trailer, which just came out, which I wasn't paying attention to at all, like, wasn't on my radar. But that is the zombie preparedness in the CDC, and I actually covered that in my previous video. I think it was that one. Yeah, because somebody posted in my comments that link, and I talked about it, and there's actually more than one link on that website about that. And then they repost from a few weeks ago the Complan 8888 PDF link, which I've covered twice in my last two videos, so check that out. I'll give you the links. Now we get to their posts. So they say triple jab equals zombie, fourth jab equals terminate the zombie, first jab equals disconnect pineal gland, second jab equals obstruct solar plex, third jab equals disconnect root chakra. Now those are big, so I'll come back to that. And then we've got jab equals BE in kill box, biological entity. And then we've got is immortal spiritual in kill box equals jab and inverted kill box. And then is in kill box B equals NPC, non-player character. And the bottom post, clan equals NPC, NPC equals AI controlled, NPC equals Alice in inverted kill box. Now, the big drops were these first ones here because, they're saying what the jabs do and how many of them it takes to have what effects, right? Now, I changed the order here. It's a bit more clear. So what happens is the first jab disconnects your pineal gland. Now, we talked about that. That was the pine cone, right? Your third eye. And there's been a war waged on that. That's kept people asleep for the last few thousand years, right? Now, they say the second jab obstructs the solar plex, which must mean solar plexus. And it's a slightly unusual contraction, but there's a missing US there, or us. And they have made some other posts about that word us or US. So that's kind of like the heart sensor or emotions, where the soul is. Now, the third jab, it says disconnect root chakra. So that's, your butt, the bottom chakra, the first chakra, governing like security and the very base kind of feelings that human beings have. And then, as they said, Majestic 12, the three jabs together, 1 + 2 + 3, will turn people into a zombie. So you get all three of them. And then the fourth jab, terminate the zombie. That's where the death comes in. So basically, to summarize that, one jab by itself might not be deadly, although I wouldn't take it still. So I wouldn't take any. So Majestic 12 is saying it takes 4 jabs to kill a person and 3 to make them into a zombie, progressively affecting different energy centers, the first pineal gland, and then the solar plexus, and then the root chakra. And then, as we said, the number 4, these 4 steps that they just mentioned, the 4 jabs, again, that connects to the Matrix 4. So this is the 4th movie in the Matrix series, Matrix Resurrections. Now, so that's a clear connection. So that was most of the video. I'll just end with one graphic here. So this graphic here, sorry, it's like in dark mode, but it is from the Law of War the Storm series. Now, basically, it's just a summary of the timeline, right? So what was supposed to happen was Hillary was supposed to win the 2016 election around 2 terms, the 2024, and during that time in her first term, this virus was already planned. So it was planned before Trump. It wasn't specific to Trump, right? And Majestic 12 suggested around 2018 it was going to be released, first come out. Now, what happened was Trump won the election, so US military unrigged that, and that let Trump in. Now, the US military knew that this virus was going to come, and it would happen near the 2020 election, which is a sensitive time. So the virus was ready to come out from around 2018, and it got pushed back slightly to 2019, the end of 2019, targeting the 2020 election in November, right? And that was to flood the fake ballots in favor of Biden to steal the election from Trump, right? And the Patriot 17 team pretended to know that they didn't know this was going to happen. And that's the trap, though, because it's allowing US military takeover of the government, which I'll explain just after this one. So the deep state, China, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, they thought they were trapping Trump or targeting him by releasing this virus at the time of the election to steal it from him and let their puppet Biden win. Now, the problem with that is that it makes the Biden administration an occupying power according to the laws of war, right? And what the US military can do is a reprisal takeover of the government. So they can arrest the Biden administration. It's a military arrest, so that's not a federal arrest because the Biden administration's in charge of the government right now. And when that happens, that is 11.3 end of occupation, and that will be the beginning of the storm. So in this timeline, I don't know the dates, but the old Patriot 17 posts were referring to the next presidential term. So the old posts from 2017 and 2018 were actually referring to events that were going to transpire in the next presidential term after 20th of January 2021. And all we know is that this end of occupation would happen during that term. So Biden's time as president would be cut short, and the US military would do mass arrests and military tribunals. And then, as I believe, they will hold a new election. So I look at the result of the 2020 election as something that was lost and can't be gained back. So the analogy that I would use is that this actually happened to the author of A Clockwork Orange, Anthony Burgess. His wife got assaulted, and she was pregnant at that time, and the baby died. That's how I view the 2020 election. I don't think that Trump can come back or be reinstated, nor do I think that's the US military's purpose. When they take over, I think that they will clean out the election system and hold a new election. So that's just how I view it. So that was a short summary of the timeline, just to give you an overview of the bigger picture. And there were more things that I wanted to talk about in the video, but I'm just going to put them in the video description for links for you to check out, because the video will just go on for too long. There's too much more to talk about, like more posts that I could compile and all these other things. But, you know, I just wanted to talk about the Matrix trailer, and it was a pretty cool video, a fun video to make, more visual, so I like the visual side of it. And I think it makes sense. There was just way more in the trailer than people thought, going back to the original post that started this dig. So this was the original post that started this dig, and as I said, you know, I found so much stuff that I don't think anyone else has covered before. Basically, it's official disclosure that's happening through the Matrix movie and through that trailer, particularly the numbers that were referenced there, the numerology, and, you know, it's much more than people think. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Please share this video if you liked it. Okay, so this is a bonus segment about points that I forgot to cover in the video, one of which was really important. And this background is some glitch art of cherry blossom trees that I really like. And so the one important point that I want to mention is that why is this being allowed to happen, right? Because a lot of people have asked that in my comment section, saying things like, how can the US military let this go so far? If they're supposed to be the good guys, doesn't that make them the bad guys? Because they're letting it happen, basically, and people are dying, okay? Now, I figured something out that's really important, which is that basically the world's divided into people who are completely brainwashed and people who are awake, or they're waking up, right? And the primary issue with the brainwashed people is that they don't actually want to wake up, right? Now, I've encountered a lot of this mindset from running my channel, where I end up talking to brainwashed people and I find out about them, right? And they have their free will, where they made their choice where they don't want to wake up, but they just want to stay asleep, right? And nothing you can do will actually wake them up. And any kind of attempt to wake them up, red pill them, has the opposite effect and actually puts them further to sleep, because they reject, you know, your kind of help, right? So you can only help people who want to wake up. And it's essentially impossible for someone like me or you, the individual, to wake up the brainwashed people. And anyone who's tried that will know, like your family or friends, they are completely brainwashed. Like nothing will ever change that. So if it's impossible to wake them up, how can they ever be woken up, right? Or can they? Now, with the injections that are going on, what's going to happen is that after 11.3 end of occupation, there's going to be these mass arrests of governments around the world and everyone who is partaking in this genocide, right? And what the effect of that is going to have is that the people who were the conformists, the brainwashed ones, those are the ones getting the injection, they're going to find out who the real enemies are. That was the cabal, that was China, the deep state, and their own governments who were literally killing them and their families, right? And that is the only way to wake up these brainwashed people, is by involving their lives and the lives of their families in what's going on. Because let's just say this virus never happened and then there was this disclosure by the US military, nobody would actually care. They would be like, some example conversation would be, oh, did you see the US military's disclosure yesterday? And they're like, no, I was too busy watching Netflix and using TikTok. So when this happens, people are going to find out who the real enemies are, and they're going to get very, very angry that their own government was killing them and their family, right? China was responsible for this. But it wasn't just China. It was people's own government who were, pushing this injection on them, and in some cases forcing it on them. And they're going to find out that their own governments, the people's governments of the world, were committing genocide against their own citizens, right? And it's going to be the shock of their lifetime. So the only way to wake up these brainwashed people, right, the ones that are in fear, that's why they're getting the injection for a virus which isn't going to kill them, but, the injection will, even if it's 4 jabs. But the point is that the US military is using shock tactics to wake up the brainwashed people. Because of how brainwashed they are, the only thing that is going to wake them up is the most extreme shock possible. Finding out they're about to die, or the family's about to die, essentially, right? And if that doesn't wake them up, what will? That's the only thing that will wake them up. And so, like I said, the world is basically divided into people who've had the injection and then people who don't want to get it, right? Now, the ones who've gotten it, they're the ones in fear, the conformists, the brainwashed ones, and then the ones that don't want to get it, they have the more free will. They're the non-conformists, the awake ones. So because it's impossible for someone like me or you to wake up the brainwashed people, the only way that it can happen, because they have free will, is that after this all goes down, after 11.3 end of occupation, they'll find out through disclosure, through the mass arrests, what was actually going on, and it's going to reverse their state of consciousness from thinking that their governments were the saviors. I came up with this kind of sick joke, which was that if you made a list of the people who should least trust in the world, and people or groups, the one who you should trust the least is essentially your own government, right? And it's funny, but it's funny because it's true. And so people are holding their governments like God, where they're expecting their government to protect them and, take care of them, which is actually impossible, because what if they're corrupt, right? It's actually very widespread in the world right now, this corruption. And so I think we're going to see a lot of anger when this happens, and that because people are so conditioned by science, modern science, it's not even real science, which is Tesla and free energy. We have this fake version of science that exists to keep people under control, right? And these people who are getting the injection are so conditioned by science and how injections, will save you, even though it's really your immune system. So basically, they don't even have faith in their own immune system. And I think the US military is going to do mass arrest of the whole world and arrest like all the governments around the world. And then there's going to be a power vacuum where those leaders are going to need to be replaced by people who are not corrupt. So going even further than that, we could see outright revolution in some countries where when disclosure happens, that is official disclosure of, human trafficking. Essentially, yeah, as I said, I think that the reason why this is being allowed to happen is that they are shock tactics to wake up the brainwashed people, because that's the only thing that's going to wake them up. And they're basically these brainwashed people, they're paying the price of refusing to wake up after so many decades of being asleep in the Matrix. So that was the important point that I wanted to cover, or most of it at least. That was a new point that I only just figured out recently, a few days ago actually. And then as for the other things in the video that I missed out, so Project Monarch is called that name because of the monarch butterfly. There is a breed of butterfly which has like these brown and black wings. And then it connects to the first movie, I think, where one of the guys talks about mescaline, which is a psychedelic drug in peyote and San Pedro cactus, and says it's the only way to fly. And in this trailer, the Matrix 4 trailer, the young Morpheus says, "Are you ready to fly?" And, it referenced the birds in the trailer. The flock of birds were stalling rememoration there. And also, in general, the medication that Neo was taking, the blue pills, they are probably a reference to how some medication definitely alters your brain and body chemistry in a negative way, very negative way, and could keep you in the Matrix, basically. So something to be aware of. And then to speak more generally, basically Majestic 12 have talked about how they handed the mass surveillance technology to the Cabal and refer to it as the weapon that they would destroy themselves with, because they used it, on the population to collect blackmail on the Cabal's puppets, right? So they could control their own puppets. But now the US military is going to use that blackmail and that mass surveillance against the Cabal and prosecute the Cabal. The military tribunals using NSA evidence. And I think overall people underestimate how real the Matrix is. And another point that Majestic 12 have made, this is on Twitter, is how the internet and social media needed to be in place before disclosure happened. So they put it in place, that is the Majestic 12. And now with platforms like Project Aparo, we know that disclosure is very close to happening. And so those were some of the points that I've forgotten. There's probably more, but that's enough for a video. Talk more about this another time.